Whoa, I feel like I dove into the screen this morning. Hey, good morning, everybody. Looky there, looky there. It is March 20th, first day of spring. Temperature outside 32. Yep, it's springtime, all right. Just a little cold. A little bit, a little bit. But it's springtime. Time to start thinking about the surfactant levels. I know, weird word, right? Surfactant levels. Uh, it's in the book, of course. It's in the book. That's why I'm talking about it. What's the best way for me to describe? Hey, there he is. What's going on, Mr. Frozen? Thank you, sir, for coming in. Loving your stuff. Loving your stuff. Keep on jamming, my friend. Uh, Surfactant levels. We're talking about plants and grass in your yard being able to absorb things. Uh, Appreciate it, my friend. Appreciate it. You keep jamming. I'm always there, as you see. I may miss one or two, but yeah, that just depends on my health and what's going on. And it's been kind of weird lately. Um, Finally broke down and had a couple of sleeping pills yesterday. Even that wasn't very restful, but I was able to catch up. Kind of, kind of. Uh, oh yeah, I always catch up with you. You know that. You can count on me for that view time because you're just jamming it out, and I'm not going to miss any of it. Oh, that's what's missing, my own music. Oh well, I'm not reaching over there to reset it. Doesn't matter. I can carry on without it. Anyway, surfactant levels. People never think about this, and it's one of a tremendous issue with the gardens and with our yards. Uh, it's the surfactant or inability to break that surface tension and get the water to absorb in. Uh, that's kind of what we're looking at here because a lot of these yards running off water and not being able to absorb water is a surfactant issue. How can I describe it? Um, it would be like waxing your skin in a sense, and nothing being able to absorb into the skin past that point. Putting too much oil on your skin, and then you go and try to wash it off, and it won't wash off. It just won't let go. Well, that's what's going on in our yards in a sense. It's an odd sense, but that's what's going on. Um, Between the chemicals that we're using and there go my hands again, between the chemicals that we're using and the uh, exhausts from chemical companies and gas and airplanes and what have you, we're causing this surfactant level in the soil, and that has a direct effect on the food web. That's our issue. That's kind of where we're losing this battle, everybody. Um, and everybody wants to look at clay, and we were talking about it again this morning. Um, Clay is a direct result of a surfactant issue. Things can't absorb into it because it becomes kind of waxy, kind of this weirdness. So nothing soaks in. Well, you can add as much as you want. If you can't get the food web working on the products that you dump into your clay bed, you're not going to get that to turn back into soil. And it's this understanding of what is soil, what is topsoil, what is dirt, and clay being the final result of all of these mistakes that we have made, that man has made. Mother Nature doesn't make mistakes. She knows exactly what she's doing. We just we need to, and there, sorry, my hands again. Uh because Mother Nature is showing us how to get around this stuff. Now, there's a few things we can do. There's a few minerals that we can use that break surfactant. There's a few plants that we can use that will break the surfactant levels in the clay, uh, and give us the ability to start absorbing in. But as we're talking springtime cleanup, everybody, because today's first day of spring. It may be 3 a.m. for me, but and 32 degrees outside, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't be thinking about what's going on out there. It all may be frozen and may act like frozen tundra. I'm not knocking your name, Frozen. That's it's just a reference. It's just a forget it. Sorry. Anyhow, uh, we got to start thinking about these levels. We got to start thinking about ways that we're going to break this surfactant tension and start getting into our dirt, start getting down into our soil, and start getting things to absorb. Because that's kind of the issue here. Uh, we want rainwater. Problem is, some of this rainwater has got things added to it to cause a surfactant level. Um, the grasses and the plants can't absorb water because what's being put into the air is blocking this. Um, so when you start looking at your yard and you start thinking about this stuff, you know, one of the ways you can look at your yard for a surfactant level is to go through and aerate or punch holes in the top layer. And I'm not going to call it topsoil yet because we don't know. It's still frozen out there. But we've got to get holes in there so that we can get air, sunlight, and water down into that soil. Um, Dawn dishwashing soap, hand dishwashing soap, not the stuff that you use in a dishwasher. It's a little bit that's a little bit finer. That's a little bit different. There's a chemical compound in there that acts a little bit differently. Um, and that's like they use this rinse agent in dishwashers to as they say. Oh, there go my hands. Sorry, Bobby. As they say, it's a rinsing agent that's going to help dry your dishes. Well, now think about that. What they're doing in essence is they're throwing a chemical right at the plate at the point of rinse so that the water sheets off, just like you would wax your car. What's in that chemical? When we take jet dry and water purified water, and we put the two together in a dishwasher, it destroys good crystal and good china because it does something. People aren't thinking about this. Jet dry, jet dry, jet dry. Yeah, this stuff is going to coat your plate so that it dries, and it's going to coat your glasses so you don't get water spots in them. Then you're going to go and put a chemical in there, whether it be a wine or a beer or a whiskey or what have you, that's going to dissolve that, and then you're going to drink it. Or you're going to take a hot food and you're going to put it on your plate and you're going to eat that. Well, how many of those plates and how many of those dishes do you need to be eating from and absorbing jet dry into your stomach lining before it starts to take an effect? Uh, Am I explaining this correctly? I mean, is anything in excess is eventually going to have an effect on something else. Just like the paint on your car. If there's a branch sitting there next to your car for 6 months, and every time the wind blows, that branch moves just a little bit against your car, that little bit of movement for 6 months of time, that's going to rub the paint off. That's going to rub the wax off. It's going to gloss off, and then it's going to rub the paint off. Same difference with this jet dry stuff. I hate to get out there with a tom tom and start beating my own drum here, but um, hand washing your dishes uh, and getting away from some of these chemical additives that they want you to use in your dishwasher. Um, and not to point at the last big fad, whatever that was. Hey, let's go eat a Tide Pod. Really? Think about the chemicals in that dang thing. Now we're going to go wash dishes with it. Now we may not be putting the Tide Pod directly in our mouth, but we're going to wash our dishes with that thing, and then we're going to turn around and eat off those dishes. Anybody understanding this, or is it just me that's totally confused by this one? So our surfactant levels are as just as important here, everybody. Think about your yard. Think about your plants. They don't have the ability to pick and choose the water they get, whether it's coming out of your fire hydrants, whether it's coming out of your house hose, coming from the city with all of its chemicals in there, whether it's coming from the sky. If the surfactant level on your plants is too high because of something man made, it's not going to absorb water. You're going to have unhealthy plants. I walked into a room today, and they were talking about the different plants having effects on this, that, or the other. And a direct question was asked. Well, you're growing garlic. Do you notice a difference in the bug content in your yard? Guy said, no, absolutely not. I haven't noticed a difference. Right, because your yard's unhealthy, dumbass. Sorry, that's reality. You're gonna have the bugs. It is what it is. You can do anything you want to try and drive off pests and pests, and here we go again, right into the pesticide mindset. Well, I still have bugs. I've got garlic growing and it's not having an effect. Your book is wrong. No, my book's not wrong. Because anywhere in your yard you walk, you've got a shit ton of bugs because Mother Nature is attacking to get rid of all the sick plants in your yard. Uh, See, that's the point of my book. People want to take bits and pieces of my book. Hey, there's Mr. Joe Durbin. Welcome, my friend. Welcome, welcome. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's just surfactant levels and kind of talking about miscellaneous here, Joe. There's some detail here, but it is what it is. Um, hey, Pascal Coins, what's going on? Welcome. Thanks for stopping in. Uh, yeah. Surfactant levels. If we cannot solve this surfactant level issue, we can't fix our yards. So it doesn't matter what you plant out there, following along in the guidelines of my book, it's not going to have much of an effect. Because once that surfactant level has an effect on your soil, you don't have topsoil. You're not going to support the food web. We've got to get around this. Dawn dishwashing soap has the ability to do this safely. That's why they use it on animals. Um, so as you're looking at your yard and you're out there doing your springtime cleanup, um, and yeah, it's time for that. It's time to start thinking about the thatch level. It's time to start thinking about getting this stuff out of your front yard. It's time to start thinking about getting all the remains from the snow that was dragged in, plowed in, what have you, and get this stuff cleaned up off the top layer of your yard before you hit the grass level. Um, and remember, we've had 5, 6 months. Some of you have had many feet of snow. What's trapped in that snow? What chemicals have been sprayed and trapped in that snow? As that snow evaporates, it's going directly into your grass. It's going directly into your bushes, directly into your trees, directly into your garden if it wasn't packed up and prepared. So we're going to have to start thinking about that. First and foremost is what's our surfactant levels? What do we need to clean off of there? How far do we need to take that every spring? It's just an issue. A lot of people don't want to look at this issue and say, well, yeah, but my yard is just a swamp and it's a this and it's that. Well, that's the surfactancy levels. That's the amount of chemicals that are laying on your soil that won't allow water to absorb. And again, like I said, in my book, I cover some of this stuff. And there are minerals that you can use that will break that surfactancy level. You can go out there with Dawn dish soap and wash your yard off after you've done your cleanups. Um, but think about what could potentially be in that snow: radiation, chemicals, exhaust fumes, stuff sprayed in the atmosphere to supposedly protect the planet. Um, all of these are issues we all seem to forget when we dormancy and be like bears and crawl back into our houses and hide from the cold and what have you. Um, these things are still going on, whether we're looking at it, whether we know about it or not. These all have an issue on your yards and on your gardens, on your trees, on your bushes, on your flowers, your flower beds, your next door neighbor's yards, your driveway, your cement, your paint on your house, your shingles, everything. All of these things are being affected by these chemicals in the air, all man made stuff, all stuff we need to address as we clean things up. You know, you wash your house down, you wash this down, you wash the aluminum siding down. Uh, 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 all of these things need to be looked at and addressed. All of them. You know, um, I was reading a study 2 days ago about wooden decks and how a lot of these womanized decks that are supposed to have 25-year warranty on the womanizing, and the deck boarding is supposed to hold up for 25 years and they're breaking down in 10. Um, that's something to think about. That's a tremendous expense depending on how big your deck is and how big your uh, uh, play area is. What's making this happen? What's causing this? This is womanizing is supposed to protect the wood, close the surfactancy level. Nothing is supposed to soak in. Um, it's all chemically treated woods and what have you, which is why you have to fear mulches coming into your yard because it could be a womanized board chewed up in there and then thrown into your flower bed or thrown into your garden as part of your mulch. You've got to be careful of these things. This is man made chemicals we're putting down. But if all of these decks are breaking down that early, have you done something to mess with the deck boarding that would have caused the womanizing to come off early? Or is there something in the chemicals? There's something in the air. There's something being sprayed. There's something up there uh, uh, to deal with global warming, or and to start becoming spongy and to start going back to nature and to start. And it's not that these womanizing companies they have standards they have to live to. Hey, Chris Varieties, they've got standards they're supposed to be living to, and the decks are still breaking down early. They've got another 15-year shelf life supposedly, and now we're out there having to rebuild our decks again because the womanizing's not holding up. Now think about your yard. Think about your soil. If whatever is causing these issues to break down a perfectly good barbecue deck on the back of your house 15 years early, why would you think your yard is not getting the same abuse, the same chemical abuse, and having an effect on the food web? Now I know I refer to this slightly different, and I know it comes out kind of confusing as I say it, and I do my best to try and think of ways to explain this that everybody's going to understand what I'm referring to. You have grass, you have the food web intertwined with the roots in direct association with your topsoil. The food web and the topsoil live symbiotically, just as well as the food web and the roots of the grass live symbiotically. There's a very small microscopic world going on right there. Yes, absolutely, Hillbilly Pyro. There's a very small microscopic world that's living right there between the two. That's the part I'm talking about. That's the whole key to this. And it's microscopic. It's so minute, but it's so important. And they very strategically went through, just like having a deck of cards and that card shark slipping the aces out and making sure they're on the bottom of the deck for him to pull when he wants them. They're so minute and so small, you never think about them, but they're the most important part of the entire scenario. So if your soil, topsoil, soil, dirt, clay have a direct surfactancy level that does not allow moisture, water, air, sunlight to saturate in and to get in, that minute little world dies. And then we have all the runoff. Then we have all the topsoils going away and being depleted. Then we have this need for GMOs because plants will no longer survive. They can no longer grow under the conditions we're putting them in. The surfactancy level is a tremendous part of this problem. We have to address that. We have to look at our yards. It's springtime. This stuff is in the snow or was in the snow that's melting off. We've got to get that surfactancy level kicked back in, cleaned back up, and put back in place, or we're going to lose this battle every single year. I was there to enjoy that. I wish I was there to enjoy that. Uh, hey, don't look. Everybody comes at me almost daily with a different soil condition, and they all want to look at this and say, "But I have this, I can't. I have that, I can't. I have this, I can't. I have that, I can't." It's not what you can't do; it's what you just misunderstand. They're in the Egyptian desert growing farms. I don't think you have that much sand in your yard, but they're growing. It's a misunderstanding. It's just a misunderstanding of what's capable in the mindset of the food web. If you can get the food web triggered, and again, it's covered in the book. If you can fire the food web and get the food web working, and there's enough organic matter there to sustain the food web, you can grow anywhere. You can grow anything. Doesn't matter. We are living on that precise ball in space that's just the right distance away from the sun, that has just the right amount of this, just the right amount of that. And it's ideal. It's that perfect marble in space. And there isn't a place on the planet that you can't. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that, but there are plants growing in the freezing tundra. There's plants that come up called tundra that come up certain times a year, and it's still cold underneath. The ground is still frozen solid. Um, but it's again, it's springtime cleanup, and we have to have the surfactancy level in mind. And once you understand that microscopic world between the grass and the grass root and the grass plant overall and the topsoil. Once you start understanding that little microscopic world in there, there's nothing stopping you from taking over and dominating your neighbors and having the best yard possible. And then when you take these same understandings and you apply them to a garden or a flower bed, and you keep those levels where they need to be, and to my knowledge and my way of doing it, I go excess. I want the extreme of the food web going bonkers in my yard all year long. even in the winter, so that I can get the most abundance possible because the food web is there supporting everything. It's the food web that clears the carbon and the nitrogen out of the air. It's not the plants, it's the food web. It exchanges it with the plant, and the plant then stores it in the soil, stores it in its roots. But we have to address that. We have to look at those issues and we have to head back that direction and look at where our surfactancy levels are. What's soaking, what's not, what's being absorbed, what's not. I mean, and you got to be careful too. You get a great surfactancy level, and then a plane flies by and they're spraying mercury in the air. Your plant's going to absorb that mercury. That's not good either. It's a very, 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 it's a very small world in there, and it balances. There's so much more hillbilly pyro. It's so much more. Uh, uh, it's, it's it's a big world in a microscopic world. Is a way of looking at it and a way of putting it. I'm trying to find ways to explain this. That's the tricky part. A big word like surfactancy and surfactancy levels, most people glaze over as soon as you use a big word like that. All what? For the what? For how? What? I think the surfactancy level between the ears is causing the problem here. Nothing absorbs as you're speaking to them because it's a level of vocabulary that's just some people have that blockage in their head that when a big word comes out, their brain goes what? Blank. And they're no good for about 2 minutes. Now, if you give them a camera and tell them take a selfie, they'll snap right out of it because they get that because it's a really small word, selfie. But then you say surfactancy level again, and blink, they're gone. It's really weird, and I've watched it happen. Sorry, there go my hands again. Don't know what to do with them. But yeah, it's springtime, everybody. It's time to clean up the yards. It's time to start raking stuff out. It's time to start looking at these levels. It's still too cold in Ohio. We're looking at 32 degrees this morning. They're calling for maybe 40s. That's a drastic change, and that's not the time to be checking your surfactancy level and washing down your yards to try and clean anything up. But yeah, it's that time of year. It's that time of year to start thinking on those levels. What do I do? What direction do I go? What do I want to do to fix this? How far do I want to take it? Well, take it as far as you possibly can because it's not work. It's just something to do. Uh, and your yard will benefit from it and pay you back in spades because you're going to have better oxygen right there next to your house, more so than your neighbor. Your yard's going to look better, more so than your neighbor. Every time it rains, your yard's going to soak it up, and the next door neighbor's yard's going to wash into your yard. And all that water that should be absorbing into their yard because of the surfactancy level of their plants, their their soil, and its inability to absorb water, it's going to wash into your yard, and you're going to benefit from it. So yeah, it's time to start thinking about your surfactancy levels. It's time to start looking at all of these issues and what have you. Hey, there's the next victim. It's time to start looking at what you want done from your yard and what your yard is capable of paying you back with. So it's time to clean it up. It's time to get out there and think about what was in that snow and what was in that cold and what was in that rain and wash that stuff away to start getting ready to ring the dinner bell. Now, again, I actually mean something when I say ring the dinner bell. There is actually something you have to do. It's in the book. If you don't do it and you skip that step, I can't help the results. Nobody can. If your surfactancy levels are down, no matter what you do out of this book, nothing's going to work. Surfactancy is that important. You've got to clean it up. You've got to get your yard ready to absorb this stuff and get your yard awake in such a way that everything absorbs in and nothing gets out. That way you're not paying the city to turn on the garden hose to water your yard, because that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to absorb into your yard, not you have to pay the city to get water to your yard. And I know it works. I do it every single year, and my neighbors go absolutely bonkers because my yard is still green in the middle of the heat wave, and they're running around dragging garden hoses and what have you and sprinklers to try and deal with an issue because their yard's surfactancy level is terrible. Nothing absorbs in, nothing gets there. Don't. Oh, well, yeah, if you're going to burn them, take those ashes directly into your gardens, directly into your flower beds. Don't throw that stuff away. There's a reason. There's a reason. It's in the book. If you have the ability to do composting, then stick all that stuff in the compost pile. Anyhow, so this was a short. I got lucky today. We didn't have the same people in here we had yesterday, so things kind of worked out a little bit better. Run through this, but yeah, breaking things up, moving things out. I would not advise Cleveland, Ohio to be out there thatching their yards yet, but if you're in the 60s, 40s to 60s, it's time to start considering that. And remember, this is morel season. Everywhere it's 40 to 60 degrees, the morel mushrooms are going to be a popping. So it's time to start looking for them, everybody. Those things are extremely hard to find and they're extremely expensive, but boy, are they good for you. Extremely good for you. So, yeah, get the book, read the book. It's available everywhere. And think about them surfactancy levels. Dawn dish soap. It will be the difference when you're looking at it raining outside and your yard is absorbing water and your neighbors is rushing into your yard. It's that big a difference. So, all right, I'm going to step out of here, everybody. I'm going to go do what I do with most of my mornings. Uh, Hopefully, I won't be back in for a week or two so that I can catch up with what I got going on because sales are down and I can only do one thing at a time. I'm only human. So we will catch you guys around the stream. I thank each and every one of you for coming in. Y'all are incredible. Y'all have a great morning.